I knew something was off the second Darren smirked. He always smirked when he was about to screw someone, like he got a bonus every time he gutted another department. We were crammed in the over-air-conditioned conference room, operations, procurement, half of finance, all of us holding empty mugs and pretending this wasn't another cost alignment ambush. He stood at the front like a game show host, all teeth and spreadsheets, and said it. Bonuses this year are being reevaluated. Margin pressure. You know how it is. I swear, the air left the room. Carla's jaw clenched so tight I thought she'd crack a molar. She'd pulled 80-hour weeks this quarter alone. Trey, who just finished onboarding 2 junior analysts solo after layoffs, blinked like he didn't hear right. I didn't blink. I already knew where this was going. Darren loved throwing grenades and walking out before they went off. We're all tightening belts. He chuckled. Even me. My wife's back to shopping at Nordstrom Rack. Laughter didn't come. Not even the fake kind. Just a long, slow shuffle of moral whiplash, because everyone in that room knew Darren had just put a Peloton subscription on his corporate card. He was the same guy who expensed $3,200 for a vendor outreach dinner that somehow took place at a steakhouse 45 minutes from our HQ with his brother-in-law's consulting firm. I knew because I saw the line item in the internal log no one else pays attention to. But I always pay attention. That's my job. I'm the one they come to when the printer stops working, when a pivot table eats their budget, when someone accidentally deletes the CapEx model. I'm not flashy. I don't golf with the VPs. I just keep the engine running, and apparently we're the first ones you gut when you need margin improvement. If you're still here and you've ever had a boss like Darren, one who smiles while he slices, do me a favor. Like this video and hit subscribe. Over 97% of you listen without subscribing, and trust me, that small click helps us expose more Darrens than you think. And believe me, there's always another Darren. Back in that room, I watched Carla's eyes well up. She's a single mom. Her bonus pays for her son's speech therapy. Trey just took on a mortgage. They don't know about Darren's private equity pet projects, or his side deals with a logistics vendor we accidentally renewed twice. But I do. I've got them backed up. Hell, I've got a private folder labeled CFO Wonderland. Screenshots, invoice patterns, offshore disbursements buried in market testing. I didn't speak up in the meeting. No raised hand, no sarcastic comment. Just nodded like a good little analyst and stared at the numbers Darren pasted into his budget slide. The formula bar was still visible. Rookie mistake. I saw the linked sheet. It wasn't the actual budget. It was a padded version. Pretty little lie he planned to feed investor relations. When the meeting ended, Darren clapped his hands and said, "Let's stay agile, folks," like he was running a TED Talk. No one moved. Not right away. We all just sat there, silently digesting the insult. Carla grabbed her bag, muttered something about daycare, and left without looking back. Trey opened a spreadsheet and just stared at it like it was written in Sanskrit. I turned off my monitor. On the way back to my desk, I passed Darren's office. His door was open, his laugh echoing down the hall as he told someone on speakerphone, "Oh yeah, shaved off $180K from ops. Board's gonna love that." That was the moment. Not the bonus cut. Not the smirk. That laugh. I didn't rage, I didn't slam anything. I just sat down, opened my private logs, and typed one new line at the bottom. Q4 bonus reductions correlates with Q3 vendor incentive spike. Then I hit save and kept working. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but something had shifted. Something permanent. They wanted us tight. Fine. I'd show them tight. Margin pressure? Let's talk about pressure. That night, I poured myself a lukewarm cup of instant coffee and opened the log file I wasn't supposed to have. The one I'd been quietly building since Darren showed up with his MBA buzzwords and 3-syllable arrogance. It wasn't even locked, just buried inside a hidden folder named Q3 Variance Review. No one ever opens those. Too boring. Too routine. But inside, everything. Every time Darren streamlined a vendor relationship and somehow ended up overpaying by 15 grand. Logged. Every internal memo where project acceleration meant bypassing procurement. Logged. Every time his signature popped up on approvals that didn't go through legal. Screenshot. If you lined up all his little margin miracles in one place, they told a story. Not fraud. He was too slick for that. But abuse, manipulation, A personal playground made from deferred expenses and cooked optics? Hell yes. I scrolled through line items and watched the rot in real time. May 6th. Advanced vendor retainer. Lux strategic. Unclear purpose. June 12th. Off-site planning session. $6,870. No attendee record. July 3rd. EBITDA smoothing per directive flagged. He was hiding cash flow shrapnel like a magician stuffing scarves in his sleeve. Nothing was criminal, but it all smelled like the inside of a gym bag full of expired shrimp. And then there was Carla. She stopped by my desk that afternoon to drop off an invoice. Her hands were shaking. Said her son's therapist had offered a discounted rate since insurance was stalling again. But without her bonus, she couldn't swing both tuition and sessions. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. Just nodded and took the paperwork, even though I already knew it didn't matter. Darren had made sure of that. I watched her walk back to her desk and sit there, frozen. She didn't even log in, just stared at her screensaver like it might tell her what to do next. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about dignity. About how easily a smirking man in a tailored blazer could play God with people's lives and walk away with stock options. I reopened my log and started making copies. Cloud backup, thumb drive, encrypted email archive. One version for every worst-case scenario I could imagine. I'd done backups before, just habit, just in case. But this time, it felt like building a bomb shelter, like whatever was coming wasn't hypothetical anymore. I added tags to everything, cross-referenced the retainer deals with board reporting cycles, labeled anything that looked like a deferred liability dump. The file got bigger. So did the knot in my stomach. At one point, I hovered over the send button, thought about forwarding it straight to audit or legal or even one of the vendors he'd screwed out of a renewal deal. But I didn't. Not yet. Because this wasn't about whistleblowing. Not yet. This was about readiness. When Carla left that night, she didn't say goodbye. Just slid her badge through the scanner and walked out with the kind of posture you only have when you've been flattened but refuse to break. That walk said more than any resignation letter. I watched her go, then shut my laptop and sat in the dark a while. Darren thought we were all just line items, easy to cut, easier to forget. I opened a new folder, named it Del Croft Smoothing Unfiled. No one else would know what it meant, but I did, and I was just getting started. 3 days later, we were all squeezed into the 7th floor war room, what Darren liked to call our margin innovation lab, as if slashing people's livelihoods was some kind of goddamn startup. The whiteboards were still streaked with phrases like ops reduction pathways and expense reimagining, written in red dry erase that never quite came off. The air smelled like burnt coffee and suppressed rage. Darren swaggered in late with a protein shake in one hand and an iPad in the other, looking like a finance bro cosplay version of Steve Jobs. "Let's tighten the narrative," he said, flipping the iPad onto the conference table with a thud. "We're massaging the optics for Q3. IR wants smooth lines, not messy truths." There it was. Massaging the optics. That phrase again. I could have gagged on the buzzword soup, but I kept my face straight, pen poised like I was taking notes. I wasn't. I was flagging timestamps, watching for keywords, logging who flinched. "Let's keep the books. Cleanish," he grinned, pausing for laughter. None came. Even his usual sycophants, the ones who treated his coffee orders like divine prophecy, shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Darren leaned back and kicked his feet up like he was untouchable. "We're not breaking rules, folks. We're just bending the light, like financial prisms." He laughed at his own joke. Someone coughed. A slide appeared on the wall behind him. EBITDA smoothing scenarios. No legal team watermark. No auditor codes. Just bullet points and plausible deniability. I wrote one word in my notepad. Real quiet and slow. Prism. He pointed to a line item labeled Deferred Recognition Opportunities. That was his pet phrase for, let's hide this crap until next quarter and hope no one notices. Except someone was noticing. Me. This wasn't creative accounting. This was Darren shaping a narrative with enough plausible structure to bluff investors while quietly cutting the heart out of the operations team. Our team. My team. The same one that picked up the slack every time he accidentally hired one of his brother-in-law's startups for a $250,000 consulting gig with no deliverables. I opened a fresh folder on my personal drive, named it Delcroft Smoothing Unfiled. Inside, I dropped screenshots of today's deck, photos of the whiteboard, and a copy of Darren's weekly forecast sheet, the one with 2 versions. One clean for the board, one real for his eyes only. He wasn't even good at hiding the differences. Just lazy or cocky, probably both. There was a moment, just a flash, when our eyes met across the room. Darren smiled like a man who thought he'd already won, like we were all just numbers in a sandbox he could flatten whenever he needed a prettier quarter. I smiled back, just a flicker, just enough, because he didn't know about the logs, or the backup folder, or that I'd already started cross-matching the deferred vendor incentives against payment disbursements routed through our Singapore office, where Darren had conveniently just taken a vendor alignment retreat 2 weeks prior. He called it pruning. I called it manipulation. The others didn't notice, or they pretended not to. You can't blame them. They had mortgages, families, dental insurance hanging by a thread. But me? I had receipts and time. The meeting ended with Darren saying, "Remember, smooth margins make happy investors, and happy investors make for good raises." The irony nearly broke my molars. As everyone filed out, I stayed seated for an extra second, pretending to tidy my notes. But what I was really doing was uploading the latest version of my files to a secure cloud vault, time-stamped and traceable only to a nondescript burner account I'd set up 6 months ago, just in case. I didn't know how I'd use it yet, but I knew I would, because Darren didn't just cut bonuses, he cut the wrong analyst. Carla didn't even clean out her desk, just packed a backpack, shut down her monitor, and left her mug on the corner like she might come back. But I knew she wouldn't. Her smile hadn't touched her eyes in weeks, and after that last meeting, it flat out vanished. I found her by the elevator, shoulders hunched like she was trying to shrink into her own cardigan. She didn't cry, didn't rant, just looked at me and said, "I can't do this for scraps." I walked her down, even though I had reports due. Screw the reports. Carla was the one who caught a 6-figure reconciliation error in Q2 before it hit the board packet. She'd trained 3 new hires after Darren froze the onboarding budget. She was the one who brought me coffee the night we rebuilt the modeling framework after Darren nuked it with one of his optimization experiments. Now she was walking out with nothing but a resignation letter no one would read. We stood at the lobby doors a moment. She didn't say goodbye, just shook her head and muttered, "Tell Trey not to wait until it's his turn." Then she was gone. Back at my desk, I stared at my screen so long the backlight started burning into my retinas. Rage used to feel hot. This felt cold, like I was watching termites eat through a beam holding up the ceiling and everyone around me was still complimenting the damn paint color. I opened the logs again. All of them. It was worse than I remembered. Vendor payouts scheduled just days before deferred expense reports. Foreign disbursements routed through a shell contractor labeled event facilitation. Darren's fingerprints were everywhere, tucked neatly into line items just obscure enough to dodge scrutiny, but only if you weren't looking. But I was. He wasn't breaking laws. He was laundering optics. And while our team bled out one resignation at a time, he was pre-selling a performance story built on our unpaid hours and temporary budget holds. Carla's bonus didn't vanish. It was redirected into the mirage he was building for Q3 investors. I didn't print anything, didn't screenshot Slack, didn't touch the company email server. I compressed the folder, encrypted it, and moved it to an isolated drive I kept taped to the back of a picture frame. Paranoid? Maybe. But I've watched too many people in this business mistake outrage for leverage. You don't confront guys like Darren. You corner them, silently, surgically. So I drafted the first version, a clean, untraceable document. No commentary, no accusations. Just numbers, just facts. Invoice discrepancies, payout patterns, deferred revenue flags. I stripped out every marker that could link it to me and used a generic font, scrubbed metadata, reset the creation timestamp. There wouldn't be a trail, just a blunt, unignorable truth bomb. I called it Unfiltered Margian Mechanics, titled the email, Urgent for Review. No greeting, no signature, just the file. Then I didn't send it. Not yet. This wasn't revenge, this was calibration. Darren built a false machine. I was just handing someone the blueprint. I zipped the final archive, set the trigger to delay delivery by 20 minutes once initiated, and stored it on the burner drive under a folder named Annual Planning Materials. Safe, quiet, ready. I closed my laptop. It was late. Somewhere, Darren was probably polishing another performance deck, lining up new charts, inventing new words for cutting people loose. But the thing about optics is, they only work until someone hands out the glasses. At exactly 8:12 a.m., I hit send. The cursor hovered for a second, like even Outlook was holding its breath. Then it disappeared, off into the server abyss with nothing but a 20-minute delay tagging along behind it. Just enough time for me to disappear into normalcy before the fuse met the dynamite. The address was buried so deep in our internal directory, it looked like a forgotten bone in a mass grave. Board com priv dist L2. No alias, no shortcut, no autocomplete, just a deadpan distribution list last updated 6 months ago, probably by a retiring compliance admin with a taste for redundancy. But the names inside? Audit chair, governance liaison, risk committee head, the real spine of the company, the ones who didn't clap at Darren's jokes. I stripped everything clean. No headers, no signatures, no forwarding trails. Just a blunt document attached to a plain text message that said, attached, irregular vendor activity logs, plus deferred expense flags, Q1, Q3. Review for compliance alignment prior to next IR briefing. That's it. No drama, no flair, just enough to crack the dam. Once the timer started, I stood up, shut my laptop like I was clocking out of a Zoom call, and walked to the kitchen for coffee. Not even the good stuff. Just that burnt French roast sludge that tastes like it's been filtered through copier toner. The office was quiet. Too quiet for a Tuesday. Carla's desk was still empty. Her chair half turned like she might come back. She wouldn't. Trey was hunched over a laptop that had been threatening to crash for 3 weeks. He didn't notice me pass. He didn't notice anything anymore. I stood by the coffee machine and listened to it gurgle, slow and pitiful. No one else was around. No one had any idea the countdown had already started. 19 minutes, then 18. The odd thing? I felt calm, not proud, not righteous, just still. Like I'd finally stopped holding something in my lungs for too long and remembered how to breathe again. The storm hadn't hit yet. Investor relations was still sipping their chai lattes. Darren was probably running late, or maybe sitting in his office rehearsing his next budget butchery with whatever intern he was grooming into an accessory. 17 minutes. I glanced at the break room calendar. Someone had drawn a pumpkin on Friday. Costume contest. Finance versus marketing. I nearly laughed. What was I going to go as? The invisible hand of justice? I poured the coffee, sat on the counter like I owned the damn place, and took a sip. Bitter. Acidic. Perfect. 16 minutes. My phone buzzed. Just a push notification. Mark it down 2 points. I smiled. Storm's coming. You just have to know which clouds to watch. Back at my desk, the screen blinked softly. No alerts, no alarms. Just a blinking cursor waiting for a new task. I let it blink, because the old task was already in motion. Hidden behind a firewall, moving through internal servers, sliding under doors with titles like Chief Risk Officer and Audit Compliance Liaison. 15 minutes. 1 email. No war cry. No manifesto. Just a set of numbers that knew how to speak for themselves. And believe me, those numbers were loud. It started with a single chime. Investor relations, normally a mausoleum of cold calls and lukewarm coffee, lit up like someone had kicked a hornet's nest. You could feel it. Not see it, not hear it, but feel it, like static before a lightning strike. The subtle shift in posture, the tapping of keys just a bit too fast, voices rising behind glass walls with the blinds halfway drawn. The investor inbox had detonated. Some questions, a few frantic follow-ups, then all caps. Requesting clarification on Q3 expense timing anomalies and vendor line items. Attached. Attached. That word echoed louder than any siren. 2 board members canceled their scheduled briefings within 5 minutes of each other. I watched the calendar updates pop up on the shared board like dominoes tipping. One of them was supposed to review Darren's upcoming investor deck. The other was scheduled to meet with legal about board renewal nominations. Neither showed. Because they were busy now. Busy reading. By 8:42 a.m., compliance froze all discretionary transfers. A little noticed internal memo went out with the subject line, Temporary Transaction Review Protocol. Most people didn't notice, but Darren did. I heard his voice before I saw him. Half growl, half strangled disbelief. He stormed into the strategy huddle like a tornado dressed in Hugo Boss. Red-faced, hair half askew, iPad clutched like a Bible with missing pages. "Who the hell leaked this?" he barked, slamming the device on the table hard enough that it echoed. I didn't flinch. In fact, I didn't even look up. I was at my desk, halfway through a perfectly dull procurement forecast for Q4, the kind of thing no one cared about unless the supply chain caught fire, which, metaphorically, it had. The hallway buzzed with whispers, Slack messages flying like shrapnel, phones lit up. You could smell the panic behind the air conditioning, the way people lowered their voices but leaned closer, the way no one made eye contact unless they had to. Darren's tantrum made it 3 rooms deep. He left strategy, stomped into risk. Same question, same storm. Pull server logs, check external activity. This was internal. Someone's playing goddamn whistleblower, he hissed. Someone tried to calm him down. I think it was legal. Didn't work. The more he yelled, the more composed I felt. I sat there typing, quiet, deliberate, moving numbers from one cell to another, as if none of it had anything to do with me. Trey looked over once. Just a glance. Nothing more. I didn't move, didn't blink, just clicked to the next tab. Because that's the trick, isn't it? Make it look like you're drowning in spreadsheets when really you're floating 10 feet above the flames. Darren burst out of risk, heading toward IT. He bellowed something about access logs, VPN traces, version controls, but his voice cracked. Just slightly. That crack, that was everything. The walls weren't closing in, they were already shut. And he hadn't noticed until just now. Down the hall, 2 junior associates closed their laptops and ducked into the copy room like deer hearing a twig snap. Even the receptionist was pretending to refill a Keurig pod that had already brewed. No one wanted to be collateral. Everyone felt the shift. It wasn't a blowout. Not yet. But the wind had changed, and people were starting to smell smoke. I kept working, because this wasn't the climax. Not even close. This was the foreword, the preamble to the reckoning. By noon, IT had launched what they generously called a forensic access trace, but it was little more than digital smoke chasing. Darren had kicked off the panic himself, barking at the head of infrastructure like it was her personal job to catch a ghost. He wanted IP logs, VPN history, access timestamps. He wanted names. What he got instead was a whole lot of could-have beens. The thing is, when you send something to an internal board distribution list, one that's technically accessible through the internal wiki if you know how to navigate the submenus, it doesn't leave much of a footprint, especially if you route it through a burner profile scrubbed through a zero-retention proxy we once used for third-party audit testing. A tool Darren approved ironically in the name of cyber resilience. Legal was pulled in within the hour. Not because they had answers, but because Darren was now pointing fingers in all directions like a caffeinated lighthouse. He wanted retribution. Legal wanted plausible deniability, and so they gave it to him. That list came from an open access directory, the lead counsel said, flat and unbothered. Could have been anyone in the org with level 2 clearance and curiosity. Translation: we're not burning an employee to save your ass. Darren didn't like that answer. He stormed out of legal, shoulders squared like he still had leverage. But the door didn't close behind him. It just hung there, ajar, like even the hinges were done with his nonsense. At 1:36 p.m., a quiet alert hit my inbox. System-wide push notification. Board session scheduled, emergency financial ethics review. No location, no participant list, just a time and a subject line. Internal escalation. Q3 reporting and expense practices. 1 hour. Darren's name was noticeably absent, not a peep from him after that. The office was quieter now, not the anxious quiet from earlier. This was surgical, focused, like everyone was watching the same slow-motion car wreck and trying not to look like they enjoyed it. At 2:07 p.m., a Slack message dropped in one of the cross-departmental channels. Anonymous, screenshot attached. A snippet of an internal email, marked confidential in red at the top, forwarded one too many times. No names, just one perfect sentence. It appears the CFO may have overstepped both policy and financial ethics expectations in pursuit of performance targets. That leak hit harder than any smoking gun, because it wasn't from a pissed off junior analyst or a rogue auditor. It was language, institutional language, words that meant, we're not just mad, we're documenting. I sat at my desk, the very same spreadsheet open from that morning. Cell B19 was still highlighted. Someone from HR walked by, stiff as cardboard, clutching a folder like it might explode. Two risk guys whispered near the printer, one of them holding a tablet he didn't want anyone to see. No one asked if I knew anything. No one dared. There was a certain peace in it. Not smugness, not triumph, just alignment. Things, for once, were beginning to tilt the right way. Carla was gone. Trey was still hanging on by his fingernails. But the storm had finally shifted directions. The board was awake. Legal was circling. And Darren was finally, blissfully alone. I opened my logs one last time that day and wrote a single line beneath the final entry. Correction in motion. Then I closed the file. Didn't export it. Didn't back it up. It had already done its job. The message came in after dark, long after most of the office had cleared out, except for the poor souls still clinging to the illusion that working late might earn back their job security. My monitor dimmed to screensaver just as the email popped through. No subject line, just a direct message from an internal relay address I didn't recognize, sent through the audit server with elevated clearance. I opened it. Would you consider a transfer to the oversight subcommittee? That was it. No greeting, no signature, no "we know what you did" or "your actions were appreciated." Just a single, carefully worded olive branch hanging there in my inbox like a peace offering from a kingdom that had just realized it might have backed the wrong king. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't even transactional. It was respectful. But that didn't mean I was staying. I stared at the message for a long time, index finger hovering over the keyboard. A few months ago, I probably would have jumped at the chance. The oversight subcommittee was the one group in this company that actually had teeth. Well, when they weren't being fed false reports. Darren had kept them at bay for months with doctored optics and smiling decks. But now it would be cleanup duty. Endless internal reviews. Political theater. Trying to build bridges in a place that only handed you bricks once they were already cracked. I typed a reply. Short, clear, no drama. Thank you for the offer. I've recently accepted a consulting engagement with a third-party operations advisory firm. Timing isn't ideal. I wish you clarity in the work ahead. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. Then I moved the message to a folder labeled Aftermath and closed my laptop. They wanted me to help fix it, to lend credibility, to slap a clean face on their institutional rot and pretend we could scrub this whole thing back to neutral. But I wasn't interested in polishing the floor they let Darren bleed all over. This wasn't some crusade for me. I wasn't here to be a hero or an internal savior. I just wanted the facts to speak louder than the fictions. And they had. Finally. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked past Darren's office, now dark, locked, and cleared of his usual wall of ego-boosting plaques. The framed quote he used to keep on his shelf, "Perception is performance," was gone. Fitting. The elevator ride down was quiet. My reflection looked tired but lighter, like something had finally shifted that couldn't be shifted back. Outside, the city buzzed with normal life. Horns, streetlights, some guy yelling into a drive-through headset. I checked my phone. One unread message from a number I didn't recognize. I tapped it open. No text. Just a photo. A sticky note on a whiteboard snapped from inside a meeting room. My own words, written by someone else's hand. Check the math. It always knows. I smiled. Brief, genuine. They'd heard me, maybe not by name, but by echo. And that was enough. The cafe was nothing special. Fluorescent menu board, cracked tile near the register, and a barista who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. But the coffee was strong, the Wi-Fi was stable, and no one knew my name. That made it perfect. I picked the corner table by the window, same spot I'd claimed every morning since signing the new consulting agreement. Different badge, different logo, different set of sharks swimming in nicer suits. But here? Just me, a laptop, and a ceramic mug warming both my hands and the last shred of patience I had left for corporate theater. I logged into my new inbox, subject lines stacked up already. Vendor audit request, forecasting model draft, internal P&L tuning, same game, new arena. Only this time, I picked the seat before the table was even built. Midway through the fourth email, a news alert slid across the corner of my screen. I didn't have to click it. The headline said it all. Del Croft, CFO resigns amid margin probe. Board cites breach of ethical alignment. I leaned back, exhaled slowly. Not a dramatic breath, just one that finally had space to leave my body. So Darren was out, not with a bang. No press conference, no stepping down to pursue personal interests. Just a sterile exit, buried under board speak and time-stamped PDFs. Perfect. He wouldn't get to frame the narrative. He'd get no send-off lunch, no bloated LinkedIn farewell posts with faux humility and hashtags. Just silence, the kind he never respected. My phone buzzed. One message, no name attached. But I knew the number. Trey. Was it you? No emoji, no follow-up. Just that. I didn't answer right away. I took a sip of coffee, now lukewarm and bitter in a way that felt earned. Then I slid my backpack onto the table and pulled out a small black folder, one I'd kept zipped and locked even after leaving. Its label was plain, written in Sharpie with a hand that didn't shake, for when they forget again. I set it next to the cup, snapped a photo, and sent it back to Trey with no caption. Let him decide what it meant. Let them all wonder. Because it wasn't about credit, it never was. It was about reminding people that every spreadsheet tells a story, whether you want to read it or not. Bonuses come and go, but memory? That's margin insurance.